If I can't keep my head held high enough, I'll just speak love and watch the smiles come, bring my spirits up. There's some shit I like to fix, but I still know that I'm blessed.
Welcome to my coverage of the January 2023 epic storms in San Luis Obispo County as well as Santa Barbara. I'm sure you've all either been experiencing or observing the torrential deadly storms hitting California right at the beginning of the new year, 2023. I'm putting this together for posterity and to honor the memory of little 5-year-old Kyle Doan. Kyle is expected to be lost due to these storms. I'll tell you about the sweet little boy in this episode. It's a heartbreaking story and even heartwarming. What a sweet little boy. I wanted to wait until Kyle was found, and today is January 24th, 2023. We're on day 15, and he's still not been found. So I'm going to go ahead and make this episode, and hopefully I'll have an update at some point letting you know that they found him. And for now, the search continues on. My coverage will be in chronological order, spanning, like I said, 15 days, including the storms, some of the local aftermath, mostly covering SLO County and a bit of our neighboring county, Santa Barbara, as well. Santa Barbara is struggling. They've got bad mudslides. That burn area with the burn scar area is super problematic when they get heavy rains still. And I'm only touching on a little bit of Santa Barbara because it overlaps with our news, and like I said, they're our neighboring county. Just so you know, what I touch on in Santa Barbara doesn't even begin to touch on the chaos and the damage they're experiencing. So I don't want to minimize it. I'm just focusing more on my county. Just wanted to disclose that. I know they're also suffering, as well as people to the north and even further south. It was what they called an atmospheric river storm, and it just clobbered the state. I'd have to do a whole separate episode if I wanted to cover just Santa Barbara. So I'm just going to focus on SLO, like I said, but our hearts are with our neighbors to the south in Santa Barbara County and across the state. In this episode, I'll be covering the storm damage, the missing, loss of life, an outdoor birth in the pouring rain, believe it or not. It has a little twist on that story. And I've lived in California my entire life, and wow, Mother Nature once again reminded everyone that she is boss. How quickly we forget till next time. Even with all the best laid plans, first responders, their training, all the drills, the unexpected will still throw it all out the window. And also remind us that we should plan on helping and rescuing ourselves. When the system is ill-equipped or spread too thin, we're left to our own devices. These storms are tragic, and thank goodness for many good Samaritans who came to the rescue too. You'll hear about some of those in this episode. You name it, it was happening. All parts of the area. Amtrak train from SLO to LA was canceled. Of course, the typical PG&E failures were spread far and wide. The least of anyone's problem was the electricity, actually. Sinkholes were in many areas. My own son almost drove into one. Thank goodness he knows to drive slow and cautious in these type of road conditions. He grew up on a mountain that had treacherous roads, so it was good training. When your kid learns how to drive on a road like that, it makes them pretty good drivers forever, although it's pretty terrifying at the time. Anywho, I digress. And sinkholes freak me out, man. There was submerged vehicles everywhere, water rescues, and of course, the usual sewage spills. Gross. No surprise there. Another system failure. Classes were canceled from preschool all the way up to Cal Poly. The Avila Beach area along the creek is always flooded and closed, and they rescued several guests and employees, and I actually worked out there for over 9 years. And I saw with my own eyes people ignoring the road closed signs from the flooding on the regular. Not me. My heart would skip a beat every time I saw someone doing it. I'm a pretty cautious person. I remember panicking about getting stuck out there due to the flooding because there's only one way in and one way out. We do have a couple episodes where we're driving along the creek there, if you want to find those on the playlist to get an idea of what it's like. And one of them was New Year's, January 2023, drive out to Avila for the polar plunge. And it gives you about the idea of the road and how it runs along the side of the road. Unfortunately, on January 9th, 2023, a life was lost. And it was a 60-year-old female who was a resident out in that area, and she couldn't get out or roll down her power windows once her car was swept away and got wet. The electrical parts no longer work. So unfortunately, she did drown, and news coverage said she ignored the road closed signs, and it's just so dangerous, people. It's not worth it. Numerous evacuations continue, and emergency shelters are set up throughout the county, and Los Osos was hit with a wall of mud, and there's lawsuits on the way. These poor people had 3 feet of mud go straight through their homes. SLO County activated the Emergency Operations Center. Airports are closed, and dozens of roads are left impassable from North County to South County. And like I said, the evacuations continue. As I mentioned, schools are closed throughout the area, and even Highway 101 is closed due to slides and flooding in multiple sections. Shell Beach has the bluffs, which are known to collapse, over by Pismo there. The bluff is barely hanging on. You can see the cracks, and the whole chunk will be breaking off into the ocean. And that bench that we used to sit on right there will be no more. Here are more photographic examples of what we're dealing with here as we begin our new year, 2023. On the 10th of January, there is still no improvement with flooding, sinkholes, downed trees, evacuations, and closures. Deaths, and of course, missing 5-year-old Kyle Doan. I've gathered various details regarding Kyle. I'll share with you what we know in this episode. There's messes and damage everywhere, and another person was found dead on a boat in Morro Bay, and it's listed as a storm-related death, but I'm not sure how it relates. People are trapped by flooding and mud, and most of us are pretty freaked out and scared. If not scared for ourselves, scared for our neighbors and loved ones. People were informed that they would be cut off for 2 or 3 days in some areas and even longer in others. I like this saying, quote, "Turn around, don't drown." Heed the warning, please, people. Of course, there's lots of damage to businesses as well. Here's another scary sinkhole. An Oceano suffered a levee break, which flooded homes and farms, and residents claim evacuation notices came way too late, and many of their animals perished, and they barely got out themselves. You can barely see the roof of this barn here, and people came to the rescue of these stranded horses. More good Samaritans. There's bridge problems as they're compromised from the flowing water, and California Governor Newsom signed an executive order for our area, hopefully getting some resources available to those affected. Once again, Highway 1 in Big Sur suffered slides. This grocery store had a tree fall on it, but it stayed open. It wasn't damaged enough to close the doors. Some areas actually have received 60 inches of rain from the period of July to January. And it also shows the averages here, and about 20 inches seems to be the more common amount. Like I said, businesses continue to suffer, and we even get an extra month to file taxes this year. Federal aid is now on the way too. And throughout this whole thing, to add to the nervousness, our phones continue to blare with continual emergency alerts. All right, now let's talk about the tragedy involving little 5-year-old Kyle Doan. As of January 24, 2023, the search continues. His description is 4 feet tall, 52 pounds, short, dirty blonde hair, and hazel eyes. He was wearing jeans, a black puffer jacket with a red liner, and blue-gray Nike shoes. What a sweet, sweet boy. It's just heartbreaking, and it's reported that Kyle's mom was driving him from Heritage Ranch to school on that Monday morning, January 9th, 2023. And at the San Marcos East Creek crossing, according to Kyle's father, there was no road closure signs in place at the time. Cal Fire says a downed tree prevented the vehicle from crossing. As Kyle and his mom were getting swept away, she was screaming for help, and neighbors heard her cries and rushed to help them. They were able to rescue Mom just as Kyle slipped away. Nothing could be done. The search has been from above with drones, helicopters, as well as all available resources from the sheriff's underwater search and rescue team. The water level remained high and fast, and the sheriff's office doesn't want any self-searches for Kyle. It's too dangerous, and those people could end up becoming victims themselves, taking away from the efforts to rescue Kyle. It was reported early on that Kyle told his mom, quote, "It'll be okay, Mom, just be calm," end quote, as they were being swept away. What a dear little boy. 5 hours later, that afternoon on January 9th, the search was called off for a time as the storm conditions made it impossible to search. I cannot imagine as a parent how that would feel. 10 days in, miles and miles of the Salinas River continued to be searched. Kyle's shoe was found pretty early on in the creek. The area being searched is said to be filled with crooks and crevices that are difficult to reach by foot. Like I said, drones are still searching, and the water levels in the Salinas River continue to change, creating challenges, making the aerial searches critical to view areas unreachable otherwise. The drones are much more economical and were used to help establish a strategy for rescuing people stranded at the Pacific Dunes RV Resort as well. Drones are proving to be handy tools. On January 18th, the sheriff's dive team and search and rescue are still searching, as well as 3 canines looking for Kyle. Grover Beach PD, CHP are also involved, and drones are searching over in San Miguel as well. Everyone is desperate to find little Kyle, and additional state agencies are joining the search each day as we are over 10 days in with no success yet. As I mentioned in the beginning, I'm covering this chronologically, so we'll get back to more on the search for Kyle in a moment. Santa Barbara Airport remains closed, and road closures and evacuations were all across SLO and Santa Barbara counties. Here's a doozy of a story for you all, with a few twists and turns. Headline reads, "Woman gives birth in flooded Lompoc riverbed." It started with calls reporting black smoke in the riverbed, and as firefighters arrived at the 200 block of North H Street, they discovered a woman in the process of giving birth in the flooded riverbed. Okay, it gets even more strange. The baby's father helped deliver the premature baby as they were surrounded by flowing water. Firefighters rescued the family, and medical personnel transferred mom and newborn to the hospital there locally, and they were both in stable condition at the time. The news reported that authorities launched a child endangerment investigation, and it's not clear if the parents will keep custody of the baby. So it is a rescue story with a sad twist. I hope it all works out. And just a side note, a lot of homeless people reside in the riverbeds around here. I'm assuming it's possibly that type of situation, but I have no confirmation of that. Moving on. Right after that rescue, a 911 call came in reporting someone yelling for help from the riverbed. 3 people and a dog were in the middle of the riverbed, 40 yards from the West River's edge, surrounded by water. And once they got out there to help, it ended up that only one person wanted to be rescued while the other 2 chose to remain in the riverbed. Throughout the storms, we were all repeatedly reminded to stay home if at all possible. They already have their hands full, as you can see. By January 11th, major flooding was reported due to a levee break in Oceano, which displaced residents, and the lagoon also flooded there in Oceano. The residents of the RV park I mentioned are expected to be stuck there a week with a choice of staying or leaving. Some of the residents put their funds together to buy inflatable boats to take supplies back and forth. Neighbors helping neighbors. The search for 5-year-old Kyle remains a top priority. CBS News released that Kyle's shoe was found, and I already mentioned that before. And right after they found the shoe, they had to halt the search because of dangerous conditions. Can you imagine the rescuers and searchers, like how frustrating? I'm sure they just wanted to continue. We started hearing more about Kyle and his family. The day he was swept away, he was headed back to kindergarten after the holiday break. Kyle was recovering from a November surgery where a metal rod was removed from an earlier fracture of his leg, according to his father, Kyle Doan. He shared that Kyle was eager to get back to playing with his friends. He was worried about his recovery, but his parents told him to wait until the first day of school in January. And I can't tell you how much my heart breaks for this family. Kyle was looking forward to finally getting to play with his friends, and his mom, who was a special ed teacher in San Miguel, California, was driving when their car was overtaken by fast, rising floodwaters. Kyle's dad explained that Kyle was telling his mommy not to worry, as I already quoted before, and the car was swept away. Of course, Kyle's mom feels awful and wishes Kyle was saved over her, but she was the closest and the only one they could reach. Hope begins to fade days in for Kyle's family. We learned Kyle and Mom left home at 7:15 a.m. on a rural path winding through wineries and ranches, and there's 2 creek crossings that feed into the Salinas River, the San Marcos Creek. Further details came out that their vehicle began floating away on the rising water, and it hit a tree and began filling with water. Kyle's mom took him out of his car seat and escaped, but eventually lost a hold of her son in the rushing water. Hours later, their Chevy Traverse was found upside down and overrun with mud and debris, making it clear she was right in getting out when she did. As the water continues to rage down the creek, it makes it tough to gauge how far Kyle may have been carried downstream. News was coming rapidly throughout the back-to-back storms. National news coverage that the Central Coast of California was one of the hardest hit areas. In addition to the damages we've already touched on, hillsides were collapsing on highways. Highway 1 remained closed in multiple areas for several days. Rivers and creeks continued to overflow, and Mr. Doan, Kyle's dad, revealed that school closures and roadblocks on the road where his son and wife were overcome by water were only put in place after his 5-year-old son was swept away. Many people across the county are upset that safety hazards were not properly marked. Locals are also upset that too many emergency services came too late. We expected the storm to pose dangers. I'm just wondering why weren't emergency protocols properly in place. Kyle's dad described his son as a blessing and a child of love. He was a great kid and expressed how unfair this is. Throughout the week, the searchers continued. By Wednesday, we got a positive update regarding Pacific Dunes RV Resort in Oceano, where crews made overnight repairs and the water receded. Poor Los Osos, though, they got hit by a double whammy where some homes were red tagged and maybe a complete loss. One catastrophe happened when an improperly maintained retention basin burst, blasting mud and water into the Vista Court neighborhood in Los Osos, with 20 homes damaged. The rubber liner tore, causing the berm to burst, and the force was described as being powerful enough to push cars right out of the garage, and it also moved barbecues and yard furniture, etc., a half-mile away. These homeowners are very concerned about possible financial assistance. Official word from Los Osos Community Services District claims they checked the basin Monday and it wasn't full. No one can confirm if the district was properly upkeeping the basin. People are trapped with no way in and out in several areas and still without power. County workers had to figure out how to help people in the Chimney Rock area where 400 to 420 people were trapped behind the Running Deer Gate. Every day, multiple times per day, we all check the updates regarding Kyle's search. My heart falls in disappointment to read that he's still missing, but my gratitude remains to read they are still looking and not giving up. Kyle's mom is finally able to speak a little about what happened in her own words. She said the vehicle hit a tree and started to fill with water. Kyle's mom, Lindsay, was not able to open Kyle's door, so she told him to unbuckle and come to her seat and leave his stuff behind. She described Kyle as being calm and telling her to stay calm as well. Brian, Kyle's dad, interjects here during the interview. With his voice breaking, he says, quote, "She was doing her best," end quote. His mom, Lindsay, explains that the current was too strong. As soon as they jumped out of their vehicle, they got separated, and Lindsay ended up near the creek banks and started screaming, "Help! Help!" Nearby property owners heard her screams, grabbed a rope, and rescued her, but Kyle was already too far down the creek. Lindsay, Kyle's mom, said, quote, "I just want parents to give their own children an extra squeeze," end quote. She said, quote, "We missed that opportunity with Kyle. It's hard seeing kids going back to school, knowing Kyle was supposed to be there too. Hug your kids extra hard and just be thankful that you guys have them, because in a minute they can disappear, end quote. Oh my gosh, my heart. Brian, Kyle's dad, shares, quote, my wife feels very terrible surviving this and not him, end quote. She did the right thing getting him out of the car. San Miguel Fire found the vehicle upside down downstream in the creek. Kyle's parents share they thought they had gotten through his surgery recovery and healing of his broken leg. Dad said this is just really bittersweet and upsetting in a lot of different ways. The family also shares they had gone on a cruise in Los Angeles during the holiday break. I'm assuming they got on the ship in LA. They were not even able to disembark because of bad weather, but little Kyle enjoyed the trip and especially liked the onboard water slides. Brian says, quote, it was a good trip and something we did as a family before going back to school. You hold on to those moments, end quote. Kyle is the baby of 3 children. He has an older sister in high school and an older brother in college. Kyle is very outgoing and likes to dance. He just started playing soccer as well. Kyle was said to negotiate stuff with his parents. He was energetic, pushed boundaries, and had been through so much with his leg injury. Kyle was resilient and overcame all that. Above all else, the Doans want some kind of closure for Kyle. Brian Doan said, quote, people struggle like we all have in various ways over the last few years, end quote. Next quote from him, you try to make progress and something like this hits you, end quote. The National Guard joined the ongoing search along with canines and drones and all the rescue crews that have been working throughout. Lindsay relived the horrific moments her son was swept away. The current pulled Kyle from her hands. She actually saw her son's head floating away, looking right at her for a bit of time while he was floating away from her backwards. Oh my gosh. How do you get that image out of your head? Ugh. It's hard to cover these kind of stories. It's heart-wrenching. And Lindsay shared with us, so I'm sharing with you what she said. Hundreds of personnel are still searching for Kyle, and vigils are being held throughout the county. National Guard and outside agencies are no longer assisting with the search, and delays continued as the storm raged for days. By that Sunday, January 15th, the search resumed again. The search continued as of Monday, January 16th, and at the start of the week number 2, items from the family's vehicle were found way up in the Salinas River. The creek eventually feeds into the Salinas River, and calculations map Kyle to be anywhere from here to the Monterey Bay. And that was devastating to read. That's far away, and the ocean is endless. All that storm water rushing to the sea, it can't help but dim hope of recovery. I honestly didn't factor in that Kyle could end up all the way in Monterey Bay. The sheriff's office says search efforts are expected to continue throughout the week. I'm wondering what about next week, which will be week number 3. Finally, the weather is cooperating. The river is receding, and it makes search efforts a little bit easier. By the 9th day, fundraisers and a green ribbon in Kyle's honor was being sold to show support. As people questioned how this happened, Kyle's mom, Lindsay, said she didn't think the water flowing over the creek crossing was deeper than normal. Here's some maps to give you an idea of the area. It's been over a week, and it has been announced that federal aid is on the way to Santa Barbara and SLO County. Arroyo Grande begins fundraisers to help flooded neighbors, and the drone searches for Kyle are now focusing in the Salinas River instead of the San Marcos Creek where he was swept away. As more fundraisers help support the Doan family, late Sunday, January 21st, 2023, it was announced that over 300 people continue the search for Kyle. Just as we suspected, these searches are concentrating now on those parts of the river that were unsearchable during high water. By Sunday, water levels subsided in the San Marcos Creek where Kyle was swept away, so they were combing all the newly accessible areas. You can see all the tangled trees and debris and etc., all the challenges they're dealing with. This is a tough one. Heavy equipment and hand crews search the piles, and even canine dogs are used to see if they locate any scent. Assessments show farmland across SLO County has been ravaged by storms. Joe Biden is officially declaring the major disasters for Merced, Sacramento, Santa Cruz, SLO, Santa Barbara, and other counties. And he's actually touring the area near Santa Cruz on the coast, just north of us. Arroyo Grande flooded in many different areas, and residents on Tally Ho had floodwaters inundate their homes almost to the windowsills. Several homes are now uninhabitable. The mayor of Arroyo Grande, Pro Tem, explains the severity and that some people literally lost everything. The 5 Cities Homeless Coalition and other community volunteers are rolling up their sleeves to help. Money raised by 5 Cities Homeless Coalition will go to help those impacted by these storms from Avila Beach to Nipomo, at least 5 of which are displaced from their homes, and over $5,000 was raised right away. Even the wildlife is being affected. Some of the elephant seal habitat has been washed away, and the local beaches are dealing with rattlesnakes. Check this out. I found this interesting. The floodwaters forced the hibernating snakes from their underground burrows through the canyons, ending up on the beach. They were washed away. They get stranded down on the beach, and they're cold and scared, and they can't move, and they're in bad shape. Some are even injured, and they're suffering from cold shock. They are displaced from burrows miles and miles away, so they're recommending to stay clear of any snakes you see near the beach. Take a photo and call the Central Coast Snake Hotline. Apparently, Governor Newsom is joining Biden on the tour of the storm-ravaged Central Coast area of California. 41 of 58 California counties are declared major disaster areas. And the death toll continued to rise from 17 to 18, and last I heard, 22. Of course, Kyle is not part of that count, as he's still missing. As of January 23rd, 2022, we're 2 weeks in to the search for Kyle, and the cleanup across the county also continues. Trees are being cleared up and removed from buildings. Local trails are closed as flood debris is cleared. Some will take weeks to clear. People living on Highway 1 on the stretch from Big Sur to northern SLO County who were trapped by mudslides will be evacuated. And the damage there is at Paul's Slide and Polar Star, plus near Mill Creek Road. Convoys will travel Tuesday and Friday, 8 a.m., 12 p.m., and 4 p.m. to help people go back and forth. and these closures are expected to be prolonged. The Department of Emergency Management wants to make sure people have access to essentials. It was announced today that the search efforts for Kyle are on pause. Searches will now take place on a limited, ongoing basis. The weekend search did not yield any signs of him. Crews were using advanced technology, as shown here. And each search team has a device that geolocates their movements and pinpoints areas of interest. The colors shown where they've searched and also where they need to go next. During the weekend search, crews did find Kyle's mom's school ID badge, but nothing belonging to Kyle was found. Crews need a day of rest after 2 weeks of nonstop intensive searching, especially after the weekend's massive effort. Future search plans will be decided day by day. SLO Sheriff Ian Parkinson says searchers will continue until they believe they've exhausted all reasonable efforts, and that was a quote from him, by the way. So we already know about the retention pond failure in Los Osos that caused a wall of mud to slam into homes. Well, it gets worse, believe it or not. One system failure after the other. Once the berm failed, the Los Osos Community Service District got the bright idea to divert the stormwater from the Cabrillo Estates and towards Pacho Valley, or Paco, not sure how to pronounce it. I'm going to stick with Pacho. This diversion caused floodwaters to now flow into the homes in the Cuesta by the Sea neighborhood. When the basin burst on January 9, 2023, with hundreds of thousands of gallons of water and mud crashing into Vista de Oro Estates, it filled the homes there with 3 feet of mud and water and debris. Then on January 12, 2023, there was a meeting explaining that they'd be diverting the runoff from the drainage of that stormwater down Pacho Valley Road, away from Vista de Oro Estates, turning Pacho Valley Road into a drainage canal. General Manager Ron Munn said the district would monitor the situation for flooding. Sandbags were also used. The plan was to drain it into the inlet through pipes that led to the bay, but apparently no one even considered that drainage is affected by the tides. Duh! Neighbors noticed flooding before the district, as they had promised, so neighbors tried to work together to keep floodwaters out of their homes. Longtime residents voiced concerns that diverting water could be catastrophic, and on January 14, 2023, 30 years after the homeowners had made changes to their properties from the last flood, water inundated their homes once again. These homeowners 100% blame the diversion for the flooding. This will be interesting. As of January 23, 2023, at least 13 residents have filed claims against the Los Osos Community Service District, seeking financial compensation for the mudslide and flood damage, accusing the district of negligence. Following the disaster, homeowners discovered their home insurance policies would not cover the damage because it's related to flooding from a storm. The negligent maintenance of the public facility caused the damage, with red-tagged homes, which are deemed unsafe and uninhabitable. The structure, the property, and personal belongings have all been destroyed. One of the yellow-tagged homes has displaced a mother along with her disabled son. The district insurance carrier has sent a third-party engineer and insurance adjuster to assess the damage. However, homeowners insist this was all caused by negligence, as they fail to properly maintain the basin as they're required to do. The homeowners feel that the district should be held financially responsible. The district is holding another meeting tonight, Tuesday, January 24, 2023, to give an update and to give staff direction regarding the damage to the basin and Vista de Oro Estates. I just checked again before I finalize this episode for up-to-the-minute updates on little Kyle Doan. Apparently, searchers found more of his belongings today, and yet again, they paused the search. They found his lunchbox and DVDs. Once the search resumes, they're saying the pace will slow. Lindsay, who's Kyle's mom, revealed more details today of what happened. She had easily crossed through the water, covering the 2 dips on San Marcos Road the night before, So she took the same route the next morning to get to work and take Kyle to school. This time the water lifted her SUV and carried it into the swollen stream. We've already covered the sad details, but Lindsay said she also held onto a tree and let go, riding the current over a quarter mile trying to catch her son. She was able to get within 10 feet of Kyle as she was pounded by logs and debris. She was jostled and repeatedly pulled underwater. Bystanders pulled her from the muddy waters, and we know that they were not able to reach Kyle. Today, over 2 weeks later, they recovered his muddy lunchbox with applesauce and a pouch of fruit dummies. The DVDs he watched in the back seat of his car were also found today, titles like Aladdin, Charlotte's Web, and Alvin and the Chipmunks. Searchers also located Lindsay's laptop and her pink pencil case that she used as a special ed teacher at the local elementary school, Lillian Larson Elementary, which is the same school Kyle attended kindergarten. January 24th, 2023, storm damage estimates are more than $100 million for the area. So far at $106 million, which $41 million is for residential damage so far. Only 584 residents have requested financial assistance from FEMA. The applications must be filed by March 16, 2023. FEMA can help with repairs, personal property loss, temporary lodging, medical, and transportation. Though highly unusual, the max assistance is $40,000. I'll bring you an update when they find Kyle.
If I can't keep my head held high enough, I'll just speak love and watch the smiles come.
Thanks for watching.
Bring my spirits up.
Don't forget to stop and smell the flowers.
There's some shit I like to fix, but I still know that I'm blessed.